Hello and welcome back everybody. Today I want to show you how to use the burn and dodge tool to help bring out some of the details in your subject matter. We're going to use it on a 50% gray layer so that we're not actually using the burn or dodge on the image itself that we want to affect. We're not destroying any pixels. We'll be able to adjust the opacity later on so that we can also dial back some of the effect. And it really helps enhance some of the light and the shadow on the face to give it a little bit more power. Okay, what we're going to do with this image here is first create a new layer, and we're going to set its blend mode to overlay, and we're going to fill it with the 50% gray. And because the blend mode is overlay, the 50% gray does not show on this. Anything lighter or darker than that 50% gray is what will show up on this layer and appear to bring out the details on the layer beneath it. So with our burn tool, having the range set to midtones, which will affect our gray, our exposure is at 20% because you want to build it up slowly. You don't want to go too far or too fast, and you're able to have a lot more control about how much burning or dodging you're doing. So I'm going to zoom in a little. And we're going to use the burn tool here to darken in certain areas, like around the sides of the head, some of the shadows around the corners of the mouth and the cheeks. And this will help deepen that a little bit more. At 20%, just a little at a time, 1 or 2 strokes until you get your desired effect. Also around the hairline here, always use a soft edge brush. Size depends on the actual dimensions of your image. And you could always adjust your brush size using your bracket keys. And working in the shadows around the cheeks here. And around the outside of the mouth. Anywhere you want to deepen the shadows. Underneath the nose. Just over the upper lip a little bit. Same thing with underneath the mouth. Maybe just a stroke or 2. And then also we have the ability to darken the eyes a lot more here. Making them look a lot more deep set. And make this clown a lot more sinister. We can also enhance by darkening the outer edge of this makeup. That's just above each eye here. And you're going to want to get to places like around the underside of the cheekbones. And this is dependent on your image. Now this one here, the guy wearing the makeup, he's supposed to be scary and sinister. So you can go a little bit further with darkening around the areas because you might just want him to be a little bit more sallow looking, a little scarier. So I can darken a little more under the cheekbones. And with a lot more of a zoom, being able to now do a little bit of that burn on the underside of his lip. And just on the inside of his upper lip. Now this is what we have here so far. This is where we started, and this is with just the burn tool that we've added in. Now before we go to using the dodge tool, I'm going to continue with the burn underneath his chin area. We're going to work on the cords of his neck here. Now, keeping the exposure still down to 20, but you want to see how I'm just darkening up the shadows and underneath. It just really enhances that little bit of darkness to help it stand out a little further. You could do this with as small of a brush as you need. And if you make any mistakes, you can press Control Z to go back a step or two, constantly adjusting the brush size to adjust to your needs. Just, and as I move around here, I see that there's a lot more smaller details I could work with. Every little bit can enhance. You can also use this on clothing if you want to enhance some of the wrinkles and the curves and the texture of the clothes that the subject is wearing here. Now we're going to move on to the dodge tool, and you have two ways of getting to this tool. One is selecting the tool from the toolbar on your left, or while the burn tool is selected, you can press your Alt key in order to switch over to the dodge tool. As long as you're holding that key down, you are able to use your dodge tool. As soon as you release it, you're back to using the burn tool. So holding down my Alt key, I'm going to now do a little bit of a dodge around the tip of his nose. Help bring that out a little bit. Just a couple of dashes around his eyes. Light those up slightly. I'm going to get right around his eyelids just a little bit. And then enhance a little bit with the dodge over on the cheeks, just to bring that brightness out a little bit more to contrast against the burning that I did underneath the cheekbone. And back down to the neck now. Just put a couple of strokes along these areas here to really make them stand out a lot more. And this is what our burn and dodge layer looks like. Now, what we might see is that some of the areas that we've done the burning and the dodging to might be a little bit too sharp, where we might see if the contrast between the light and the dark is a little too sudden, not blended in enough. If that's the case, what we're able to do is, while on our layer with the burn and the dodge, like I'm gonna say around this area here. Oh, actually, this little area here, that might be a little too sharp. So what I can do is grabbing the lasso tool, draw a selection around that area, and then under the filter menu, go to blur and Gaussian blur. And from there we can adjust the radius of the blur for this area until it's a nice subtle fade between the light and the dark. And that's how we use the burn and the dodge tool on our 50% gray layer to enhance our subjects. Once again, the before and after. And you could do a lot more fine tuning with this to get into a lot smaller details around the clothing, around his cheeks and nose, as much detail as you want to put into it. Now, besides images like this, you can also use this on images of women as well. Now, this one here is a little bit different. It's a much brighter image and a lot softer. So you're going to want to take care of it delicately. We're going to create a new layer and set that blend mode to overlay. Give it our 50% gray fill. A nice large brush. Now I'm going to set the exposure down to 10% because we're not going to need much here. Remember, we don't want to go too far with the burning or the dodging. It may create an effect that looks entirely too unnatural and perhaps cartoonish. So for this, with an exposure of 10%, I'll just lightly use the burn tool around the sides of her forehead and around her hairline, and making sure with a smaller brush I just lightly cast it down the sides of her cheeks. Now at an exposure of 10%, it might not be noticeable from what you can see, but it is very slight. Now I could do more, but I don't think I'm going to here. Now I'm going to zoom in a lot further, and we can add some of this burn around the outside edges of her eyes and a little bit into the upper eyelid. Just a little bit, very softly, never too much. And around the bridge of the nose, also very light stroke down both sides. And around the edges of her nostrils, underneath her nose. Now just one or two strokes with your mouse or your stylus if you're using a tablet. You don't have to do much to it. And around her lips here. And you can see there's already a thin, slight shadow underneath her bottom lip. Now to enhance that, we just make sure that the rim of our burn brush is both on top of her lip and outside the lip. So we do one stroke across the entire bottom lip there. And this place where the two lips connect over here, want to deepen that shadow a little bit. Do a couple of strokes across her lips and a little bit on the outside of the upper lips here. And we're also going to do a slight burn effect underneath her chin here. One soft swipe across the neck, down the sides of the neck, and across her collarbone a couple of times to really bring out the shadow of her bone structure. Now let's see, I want to darken her eyes just a little bit. So one or two swipes of the burn tool around her iris, bring those down just a little bit to a slightly deeper blue. And this is our before, our after. If it turns out that it might be too much for you, you can dial back the opacity a little bit. I'm going to throw that down to say about 84%. And we have our final image for this subject here. Now, besides both men and women, you can also use this on any other object, from clothing, as I said earlier, to any other inanimate objects, food, landscapes, anything that you can think of that you want to deepen the shadows or brighten the highlights to bring out those details, bring out some depth to the subject. Like, we can use it on animals here. Now, I love this image of the elephant because it has a lot of texture and detail throughout the image. I'm not going to work with the entire thing, but I'm just going to show you some of the effects you can do with the burn and dodge tool on an animal such as this. And as usual, I'm going to create that new layer as an overlay with 50% gray fill. Let's zoom in nice and close to the trunk area. Now I'm going to have the mid-tone set to 30%. So I'm going to have a much more visible effect, but we will be able to turn down the opacity if it's too much. Now, around the areas of the trunk where the wrinkled skin folds over on itself, right where the shadow is formed naturally and underneath that fold, use that dodge tool to just darken up the underneath of that, down each little section of its trunk. Now you don't have to be entirely and overly precise about these movements here because we're working on a separate layer. If we find that we've made a mistake, we can step back a couple of states to undo it, or we can ditch the layer entirely and start over. Also, if it becomes too much of a problem, because it is a 50% gray layer, if I wanted to go back to its flat 50% gray state, I could just change the color of my brush to 50% gray and paint out the areas that have become a problem to me, and then go back to where I wanted to go. Now I'm holding down the Alt key and now going to dodge right above the area that I've just burned to help give me a lighter line and enhancement of the texture and the light and the folding of the skin, which beautifully brings it out, helps it stand out much better against the rest of the body. Now you may not be able to see exactly the changes that are happening as I'm painting them in here, depending on the resolution of whatever media you're watching this video by. But it is creating a nice effect. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and show you the difference between the two. Now this isn't the entire trunk, but in just this area here, you can see how just the slight burn and the dodge on this area alone helps bring out the texture of this elephant's skin, which already has so much going for it. It's beautiful. Now you can do this on other parts of the elephant if you want to enhance. Like I'm going to just do a little bit around this side of the image right now, around its eye. Just do a little bit of, I'm going to want to take that back, so I'm just going to undo that. I'm going to take my exposure down to, let's say, let's get this down to 15%. I don't want to go too much around the eyes here, and just do a little bit of dodging in this area over here of the eye, little underneath. Let's see, directly under the eye and the sides, and then doing my dodging right on the upper ridge of this eye, little bit on the eyelid itself and underneath, just to bring out some more of that contrast, help it stand out against the rest of the image. And also up here I can do a little bit dodge, do a little bit of burning around this area of the ear. Nice, fast, and loose strokes with the pen. And just a little bit of dodge. And see how that is brought out some. I can, which I'm going to do is bring that exposure down to 10% with a slightly larger brush. just do some burning around here to help it blend in and fade out to the rest of the ear texture so it doesn't look too abrupt. And once you do this throughout the image, in any part that you feel needs to have this this extra enhancement, this is really going to make a striking image because a lot more time could be spent with all of the different layers and levels of texture in this image that I just don't have the time to get into right now, but you kind of get the idea. Using your burn and your dodge tool can bring out just unknown levels of detail in your images, and all without doing any damage to your original layer. You can just take this layer, you can blur this as I've shown you earlier. You can paint it out with 50% gray or just ditch the layer entirely and start over. And now you have one more idea on how to use your burn and your dodge tool to enhance the contours, the details, the contrast, and the depth of your subjects in your images. From your evil clown people to your beautiful soft women to your elephants. Well, that's my video, and thanks for watching. If you would like to continue to see new videos as they become posted, please feel free to click the subscribe button below or check out a couple of my other videos which are showcased over on the right side there. I hope you learned something and had some fun, and I look forward to seeing you next time.